Trust. It's a word we toss around carelessly, believing it's unbreakable, until the day it shatters right before our eyes. My name is Julian Moore. I spent my life mastering the art of control, reading markets, forecasting the impossible. I thought I knew all the risks, but the one thing I never saw coming was betrayal by someone I trusted most. My wife was my greatest investment. Beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, and utterly convincing. But beneath her flawless smile was a plan so cold, so calculated it nearly destroyed me. This is not just a story about deception and revenge. It's a story about strength, resilience, and reclaiming your power when you've lost everything. Because sometimes, losing it all is exactly what you need to truly find yourself again. This is my story. They say clarity often arrives too late. But for me, it came wrapped in silence at 1:12 a.m. in the dim glow of our hallway nightlight, as I stood barefoot in the kitchen, drinking lukewarm water from a crystal glass my wife insisted we register for at Bloomingdale's. That night, everything shattered, not with a scream, not with a bang, but with a whisper through a half-open door. But let me start before that. My name is Julian Moore. I'm 38 years old. I've built my life on numbers, patterns, probabilities. Wall Street taught me that control is an illusion, but preparation is power. I co-founded one of New York's fastest-growing investment firms. My days were a blur of meetings, projections, deals closed over bourbon, and my nights, well, they used to be quiet, predictable, anchored by the soft click of heels in the hallway and the scent of neroli on her skin. Her name is Alina. Alina was the kind of woman who made other women nervous. Smart, beautiful, assertive without being abrasive, kind but calculating. A Harvard-trained divorce attorney with the icy poise of someone who knew how to turn the truth into a tool or a weapon. And she chose me. Or at least, that's what I believed. Our marriage looked pristine from the outside. Art Deco condo in Tribeca, brunches with curated friends, spontaneous getaways to Europe when we needed space to breathe. We were the couple others envied but couldn't quite relate to. Maybe that should have been the first sign. I remember the night it all started to unravel because it was so ordinary. I had flown in from Chicago after closing a hedge fund expansion. Exhausted, but satisfied. Alina had cooked, or rather, plated lobster risotto she'd ordered from that overpriced fusion place downtown. We drank half a bottle of Brunello and watched a documentary on cult leaders. She made a dry joke about how love is just another form of indoctrination. I laughed. She didn't. Around midnight, I woke to find the bed empty beside me. I figured she couldn't sleep again and went to read in the guest room like she sometimes did. I padded quietly down the hall, not to check on her, but to grab water. And then I heard it. Her voice, hushed but sharp, drifting from behind the study door. He'll sign. Trust me. If we position it as a restructuring of assets before year-end, he won't question it. He never does. Pause. Then, a deeper male voice. And the trust documents? I'll get him there. Just need him to sign before the 15th. After that, it all transfers clean. Offshore. He won't even see it coming. Silence clawed at my throat. I didn't push the door open, didn't yell, didn't even blink. I just stood there, heart still as stone, mind accelerating like a freight train with no brakes. She was talking about me, about my money, my name, my trust. And I realized this woman I slept beside, laughed with, trusted with passwords and dreams, was orchestrating my financial execution with the precision of a surgeon and the coldness of a predator. But here's the thing. I didn't confront her. Instead, I went back to bed. Slowly. Carefully. Because something deeper than rage had settled inside me, something older, colder. Survival. Over the next few days, I played the role of the loving, distracted husband. I kissed her on the temple every morning, asked about her cases, pretended not to notice the extra calls she took outside. But at night, I started tracing shadows. I accessed joint accounts. I ran audits on transactions. I reviewed the shell companies I had blindly signed off on, entities she had insisted were just tax efficiencies, and then I found it. A wire transfer masked through 3 accounts, landing in a firm I knew too well, Elston and Dorrance, a boutique legal group specializing in domestic wealth redistribution, a pretty name for legalized looting. Mark Elston, a sleazy, always smiling type, the kind who wore tailored suits and called waitresses darling. He had been circling us for years, always one drink too friendly with Alina at events, always suggesting next-gen asset protection like it was some clever joke. I used to laugh. Now I understood the punchline. But I wasn't alone. I needed someone I could trust, someone who played the same game, but with integrity. That's when I called Danielle Harlow. Danielle and I had worked together during my early years at Marwick Capital. She had a mind like a scalpel, and the morality of a pragmatist. Now she ran her own boutique firm specializing in protecting high-value individuals from financial abuse, including the kind that comes in wedding rings. When I met her at a quiet cafe in Midtown, I didn't say hello. I handed her a flash drive and said, "I think I'm being hunted by my own wife." Danielle didn't blink. "Let's hunt back." That moment, something shifted in me. I wasn't just a husband anymore, I was a target. And if I wanted to survive, financially, reputationally, psychologically, I had to stop acting like prey. We moved fast, transferred assets into an irrevocable offshore trust under an LLC controlled by an independent board, liquidated certain portfolios and reallocated them through layers of privacy shields. I even created a fake vulnerability in an account she thought I had forgotten about, left slightly exposed. Bait. All while Alina kept smiling, kept playing the role. She started leaving folders on the kitchen table, labeled Asset Optimization, with sticky notes like "Sign by Friday" in her delicate cursive. She cooked more often, wore the perfume I used to love, even suggested we take a weekend in the Catskills to reconnect. I said yes to everything. I signed nothing. She wasn't just acting, she was performing. And it terrified me how convincing she was. If I hadn't heard that call, I might have gone along with it. I might have signed away my entire legacy in exchange for risotto and rehearsed kisses. One night, she sat beside me on the couch and said softly, "I know we've been distant. I just want to feel like us again." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't know who us had ever been. I had loved an image, a construct. The real Alina was a strategist, and I was just her latest acquisition. I kissed her on the forehead and whispered, "Me too." And the countdown began. I knew she'd strike soon. I just didn't know how viciously. What I didn't anticipate was how far she and Elston were willing to go. But that's a story for Act 2. Because first, I had to become the man who could dismantle the woman I once loved, without losing the part of myself that still remembered her laugh, her touch, her whispered lies in the dark. I had to become my own weapon. And I wasn't done sharpening yet. In the days following my discovery, sleep became something foreign, distant, replaced by a restless hypervigilance. I lay awake each night beside Alina, feeling the cold weight of the truth between us, heavy and unspoken. Every breath she took felt rehearsed, every touch an unconvincing imitation of affection. But outwardly, I maintained perfect composure, becoming the actor in my own home. The call haunted me, not just what she'd said, but how she said it. Cold, clinical, devoid of emotion. It was the voice of a lawyer, yes, but also the voice of someone who viewed love as merely transactional. I spent countless hours in my home office under the guise of late-night market analysis, but in reality, I traced every trail of deception she'd left behind. Each step revealed more than I anticipated. Funds quietly siphoned, documents subtly altered, assets restructured into phantom entities. Every revelation stung, not just because she had betrayed me, but because I'd blindly signed and smiled at every carefully orchestrated maneuver. One evening, I stayed late at my office downtown, the glow of city lights washing through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The empty building felt strangely comforting, a fortress of glass and steel protecting my thoughts from intrusion. Danielle arrived after midnight, striding through the conference room door, her presence bringing clarity and urgency. "You look terrible," she said, her voice half teasing, half concerned, placing a coffee cup in front of me. "You'd look worse if you discovered your entire marriage was a carefully orchestrated heist," I replied dryly. Danielle didn't smile. She sat down opposite me, spreading documents and photographs across the polished mahogany table. "It's worse than we thought," she said quietly, eyes sharp with intensity. "Alina and Elston, they've done this before. At least 3 other cases that fit her exact pattern. Wealthy men, targeted assets, offshore accounts, airtight prenups bypassed by carefully executed emotional manipulation." My stomach tightened, a bitter bile rising in my throat. "So I wasn't special, just another mark?" "You're the biggest fish yet," Danielle responded bluntly. "They've refined their methods over time. You're not just a target, Julian, you're their masterpiece." I stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, taxis crawled slowly through the streets, unaware of the quiet violence unfolding above them. I stared into the darkened reflection of my own face, realizing how naive I'd been. Arrogance had made me believe I was untouchable. Love had convinced me she was different. "We can't just wait," Danielle urged. "We need a counter-strategy. Immediately." I nodded, turning back. "Then we build one. But first, we let her believe she's winning." Danielle's brow lifted slightly, curiosity mixed with concern. "What do you mean?" "Alina's power comes from control. If she suspects resistance too soon, she'll adapt her plan. We need her confident, careless. She has to believe I'm completely blind." Danielle studied me, then nodded slowly. "Risky, but it makes sense. What's your move?" "We build her a trap so convincing she'll step willingly into it," I said, my voice steady. "I'll feed her just enough false vulnerability to keep her distracted. Meanwhile, we'll quietly secure everything vital offshore, out of her reach. When she moves, she'll realize she's holding nothing but empty paper." "You realize what you're proposing?" Danielle cautioned, her voice measured. "It's not just assets at stake. Once the legal wheels start spinning, your reputation will be fair game. She won't just come after your money, she'll come after you." I paused, eyes fixed firmly on hers. "She already has. My mistake was thinking this was about love. It never was. For her, it's about power, control. I'm done being controlled." We worked through the night, creating an intricate blueprint for my defense. Financial transfers, private trusts, layered offshore entities, an elaborate maze designed specifically to counter Alina's strategy. Danielle showed no fatigue, driven by a quiet anger of her own, one she had yet to reveal fully. I sensed a deeper story behind her intensity but didn't ask. We all had secrets. By dawn, exhaustion pulled heavily at us both. Danielle collected the papers carefully, looking up at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Admiration, perhaps, or simply empathy. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly. "Ready or not, I don't have a choice," I said. "She made the rules. I'm just rewriting the game." Danielle nodded, placing a reassuring hand briefly on mine before departing. Alone again, I watched the sunrise bleed gold and orange over the skyline, illuminating everything below in brilliant clarity. It felt symbolic, an end and a beginning wrapped together in shades of fire. When I returned home, Alina greeted me at the door in a silk robe, her smile carefully curated. "Long night at the office?" I matched her smile, stepping past her. "Deals don't close themselves." She watched me, curiosity flickering briefly in her eyes. "You seem different lately, Julian." "Do I?" I asked casually, pouring myself coffee. "I suppose I'm just seeing things more clearly." She hesitated, then came closer, wrapping her arms around my waist, chin resting lightly against my shoulder. Her voice whispered softly in my ear, "Are we okay?" I forced myself to relax into her embrace, feeling the ice-cold calculation hidden beneath her warmth. "We're exactly what we've always been," I replied gently, the truth hanging silently between us, unspoken and dangerous. She smiled again, satisfied for now, unaware her facade was as transparent to me as the glass walls of my office. I watched her walk away, feeling the sharp ache of betrayal twisted with something darker, a quiet, lethal resolve. I knew now that love, in its purest form, was simply vulnerability willingly handed over to another. But I'd handed mine over blindly. That mistake, I vowed silently, would never happen again. The chessboard was set. The pieces were in motion, Now all that remained was waiting for the right moment to strike, and when I did, there would be no mercy. In the days following my meeting with Danielle, my life evolved into a careful dance of masks and mirrors. Outwardly, I was still Julian Moore, the successful, oblivious husband, smiling at dinner parties, nodding politely at colleagues, playing the role I had unknowingly perfected. But beneath the surface, I was carefully unraveling every thread Alina had meticulously sewn into our lives. I started noticing the subtle shifts in Alina's behavior, nuances so minute they would have remained invisible had I not already been alerted. She touched me more often, lingering her hand briefly on my shoulder, smiling sweetly as she handed me the very documents she believed would seal my financial doom. Her charm was flawless, her manipulation elegant, but now utterly transparent to my eyes. On a rainy Wednesday morning, while she showered, I carefully examined the stack of papers she'd casually left on the dining table marked Asset Restructuring. Each word had been meticulously chosen, crafted with an artist's precision to appear beneficial. But beneath the elegant phrasing, it was clearly designed to strip me of every meaningful asset, leaving her the sole beneficiary in the event of any separation. Even her signature fluid, precise, assured, was an insult hidden in plain sight. I imagined her quiet satisfaction as I signed these papers, innocently surrendering control of everything I had built. My heart twisted at the realization of how deeply she'd played me, how deftly she had turned my trust into vulnerability. The betrayal wasn't merely financial, it was existential. But I wasn't merely a victim. Every move she made I now recorded, cataloged, and analyzed meticulously. Each smile, each phone call, each whispered conversation was a data point in the puzzle she had so carefully constructed around me. One evening, while she was at a supposed business dinner, I decided to dig deeper into her history. Danielle had uncovered disturbing patterns in Alina's past relationships. Men who had mysteriously surrendered substantial assets upon separation, each case settled privately, quietly. There was an uncanny similarity: wealthy, ambitious men who trusted Alina implicitly, convinced their separations were merely personal failures, not strategic conquests. In the quiet of my home office, lit only by the soft glow of the monitor, I dug into old files Danielle had sent me. Photographs, timelines, transactional records, each carefully documented. Alina's previous marriages and relationships formed a chilling, consistent pattern of exploitation. She had perfected the art of emotional manipulation long before she ever met me. A cold shiver ran through me as I opened one particular document, a confidential email from Mark Elston. He had sent it from a secure account, but Danielle's investigators had decrypted it with precision. The email read, "This one will be our most profitable yet. Moore's trust is almost absolute. Ensure he doesn't hesitate on the signature. Remember, timing is everything." My jaw tightened. I felt anger rise sharply, a surge of heat that threatened my carefully maintained composure. I stood abruptly, pacing to the window, watching rain blur the lights of the city into an impressionist canvas of gray and gold. How had I allowed myself to become such easy prey? Arrogance, naivety, love? All three, perhaps, blended into one toxic brew. I knew I had to gather more irrefutable evidence, not just to save my money, but to salvage my dignity. More than that, I had to understand the full extent of their deception. Alina believed I was still unaware, still trapped by love and ignorance. My advantage lay precisely in maintaining that illusion. Returning to my desk, I checked our joint accounts again. Alina had grown bolder, siphoning larger sums into the accounts controlled by Elston's firm. Her confidence bordered on recklessness, convinced of my complete ignorance. A small smile formed on my lips. Her arrogance would be her undoing. A few days later, I scheduled a lunch meeting with Elston. We sat in a corner booth of a busy steakhouse, him smiling confidently, me feigning casual oblivion. He ordered rare steak, taking slow, deliberate bites as he spoke. "You know, Julian, Alina mentioned you've been under some stress lately. We just want to make sure you're managing your assets properly." I leaned back, keeping my expression carefully neutral. Stress comes with the territory, Mark. You know how it is: volatile markets, complicated strategies. But thankfully, I have Alina handling things. She's so thorough. His eyes flickered slightly, assessing, before he regained his composure. She's exceptional. Truly cares about protecting what's important. Just make sure you sign off on the restructuring she prepared. It'll simplify your life considerably. Absolutely, I smiled, feigning gratitude. Trust is everything, isn't it? Mark nodded, a predatory gleam briefly surfacing in his eyes. Indeed, Julian. Trust makes life simpler. I left the meeting both disturbed and invigorated. Mark's veneer was cracking subtly, his greed starting to overtake caution. They were ready to move fast, and I would be ready. That night, I lay awake beside Alina. She slept soundly, breathing softly, oblivious to my growing resolve. The bed felt foreign now, our bodies mere inches apart yet separated by an impenetrable chasm of betrayal. My mind drifted through memories, each moment we shared now tainted by my knowledge of her true intentions. I remembered our wedding day, the way she'd looked into my eyes, her voice shaking with what I'd mistaken for genuine emotion. Had any of it been real? Or had I simply seen what I wanted to see, fooled by the illusion she so skillfully maintained? The question haunted me, gnawed at the edges of my composure. I turned quietly to watch her sleep, noting the delicate rise and fall of her chest. How easily she'd hidden behind beauty, charm, and intelligence. How skillfully she wielded them as weapons. A quiet realization settled over me, my own role in allowing this deception to flourish. I'd seen what I wanted to see, ignored red flags disguised as affection, convinced myself her calculating mind was simply intelligence, not cunning manipulation. But clarity, once achieved, cannot be unlearned. And now, there was only one path forward: to dismantle her carefully orchestrated trap piece by piece, until the entire illusion collapsed under its own weight. Early the next morning, as Alina prepared breakfast, I watched from the kitchen doorway, noting her careful movements, her meticulous control. She glanced up, smiling warmly, unaware of how transparent she had become to me. "You're quiet this morning," she remarked lightly. I returned her smile, pouring myself coffee with deliberate ease. "Just thinking about work, a few loose ends I need to tie up." Her eyes sharpened slightly, suspicious but dismissive. "Don't stress too much," she said softly, reaching out to gently touch my cheek. "Everything will turn out exactly as it should." Her words resonated between us, layered with unspoken meaning. I nodded slowly, my voice steady, betraying nothing of the storm raging beneath. "Yes, Alina, I'm sure it will." As she left the kitchen, I felt a dark satisfaction settling within me. She believed she was moving freely, that the game was hers alone to control, but every step she took now was exactly where I intended her to go. The stage was set, the pieces aligned. All that remained was timing delicate, precise, unflinching. In chess, the greatest victories come not from brute force, but from patience, positioning, and quiet calculation. Alina had set the board, but she'd failed to recognize her opponent. She'd forgotten that I, too, knew how to play. The coming days would test us both, stretching our pretenses to their breaking points. But when the final move came, only one of us would emerge intact. And for the first time since I'd heard her voice behind that closed door, I felt truly ready. Nothing prepares you for the moment your life fractures publicly when private betrayals are dragged into harsh, unforgiving daylight. The morning I was served with divorce papers began quietly enough. But by noon, everything I had built was engulfed in a wildfire I could neither contain nor ignore. I had just finished reviewing a client report when my assistant Emma nervously knocked on my office door. Her eyes held an apology before she even spoke. "Julian, someone's here to see you. Official business," she said softly, avoiding my gaze. The messenger entered, professional and dispassionate, handed me the envelope and left without a word. The seal was stamped from Elston and Dorrance. I didn't need to open it to know what lay inside. Alina had officially declared war. Yet, nothing in those meticulously drafted papers shocked me. I'd anticipated demands for asset division, financial support, and even claims on premarital assets. What caught me off guard was how swiftly and brutally they moved beyond legal maneuvers. Before I could even process the documents fully, My phone began vibrating incessantly, text alerts flooding in from colleagues and associates, each bearing the same alarming headlines. Wall Street titan Julian Moore under investigation for alleged financial crimes. My blood ran cold. They weren't just coming for my wealth, they aimed to destroy my reputation, the foundation upon which my entire career rested. The accusations were lurid, detailed, and frighteningly believable. Offshore accounts, falsified tax documents, elaborate money laundering schemes, all painted with convincing yet fictitious precision. I stared numbly at the headlines. Alina knew exactly how to weaponize my trust, not just legally, but publicly. She understood intimately that in finance, trust is currency. Once lost, it rarely returns. My first instinct was rage raw, consuming anger. I wanted to storm her office, confront her directly, to tear down the facade and expose her calculated treachery. But anger wouldn't help now. I had to be smarter, calmer, ruthless, but patient. Danielle called moments later, her voice taut with urgency. "Julian, you've seen it?" "Every damn word," I growled, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It's pure fiction." "Of course it is," Danielle snapped. "But perception is reality, Julian. Clients are already panicking. Investors are calling, asking questions." I exhaled sharply. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," she admitted. Elston leaked detailed falsified documents. On the surface, they're convincing. They even had your digital signatures. The media won't bother verifying before spreading it. I closed my eyes briefly, steadying myself. They made the first move. Now we make ours. Over the next few days, the full scope of their assault became clear. Alina and Elston had orchestrated a media blitz, carefully timed leaks, and anonymous tips to federal authorities, creating an illusion so compelling even loyal clients questioned my innocence. Longtime investors pulled out, contracts were quietly terminated, and whispers followed me wherever I went. But beneath their chaos, I quietly executed my counterplan. Danielle had meticulously collected evidence of Alina's fraudulent maneuvers, the altered metadata, falsified account statements, and carefully disguised money transfers. Each piece of evidence now formed the backbone of our legal response. Yet I knew, before victory could come, I would have to withstand public crucifixion. One afternoon, while the media frenzy was at its peak, I stood silently in my empty office, gazing down at the streets below. The once busy phone lines were now quiet. Employees whispered anxiously in hallways. Emma approached hesitantly, carrying resignation letters from two senior partners. My career, carefully constructed brick by brick, seemed to be crumbling into ruin. "Are you all right?" she asked softly, her concern genuine. I smiled bitterly. "I will be, eventually." She lingered a moment longer, visibly torn. "For what it's worth, Julian, I believe you." Her words landed gently amidst the storm. I nodded, quietly grateful. "Thank you, Emma. That means more than you realize." When she left, I sat alone, absorbing the weight of solitude and betrayal. I imagined Alina watching from a distance, confident her scheme had broken me. She probably pictured me defeated, broken, alone, but she underestimated my resilience, my anger, my clarity. The hardest blow came late one evening, as the sun dipped low over Manhattan's skyline. Alina called, her voice deceptively gentle, layered with feigned sympathy. "Julian, I didn't want it to end this way," she murmured softly. I gripped the phone tightly, forcing calm into my voice. "Yet here we are." She hesitated briefly, perhaps sensing my resistance, then continued. "I always admired your strength. Maybe you'll find your way through this somehow." "Alina," I replied quietly, "one day, your mask will slip publicly, just like it has for me. Everyone will see who you truly are." She paused, then laughed softly, chilling, precise, triumphant. "And who exactly am I, Julian?" "A predator in perfect disguise," I said, ice-cold clarity sharpening my voice. She hung up without another word, leaving me holding silence as sharp as broken glass. Her call had been strategic, another psychological blow, meant to push me further toward despair. But instead, it hardened my resolve. She might have controlled the narrative temporarily, but soon she would discover that trust cuts both ways. That night, I met Danielle again, this time at a secluded corner in a nearly deserted diner. Her expression was fierce, purposeful, determined. "I've secured critical forensic proof," she began immediately, sliding a small device across the table. "The emails, financial documents, the transfers all digitally manipulated, traced directly back to Elston's firm. We have everything we need to dismantle their case completely." I stared at the tiny device, understanding the enormous power it represented. "Will it be enough?" "More than enough," Danielle said confidently. "But we have to move carefully. Right now, the world sees you as guilty. If we strike prematurely, they'll spin it as desperation." "What's our next move?" I asked, eyes locked on hers. Danielle leaned closer, her voice low, intense. "We wait until they feel absolutely certain of victory then, and only then, we strike back publicly, definitively. We show the world exactly who Alina and Mark Elston truly are." "And what if we fail?" I asked, voice tight with suppressed emotion. Danielle smiled faintly, calm assurance illuminating her face. "We won't, because this isn't just about you anymore. It's about every person they've manipulated, every victim too ashamed or too broken to fight back. Your fight is theirs, Julian." Her words resonated deeply, strengthening my resolve. It wasn't merely vengeance, it was justice. Alina had hoped to silence me through humiliation and financial ruin. Instead, she'd unknowingly given me purpose, transforming my personal tragedy into a powerful cause. When I returned home that evening, the condo felt hollow, haunted by memories and illusions. I moved quietly through the rooms, pausing briefly at our wedding photo, her smile radiant, convincing. Now it was just another carefully staged scene. I placed it face down on the shelf, feeling a sharp but necessary severing. Late that night, standing alone on my balcony, looking out over the city, I realized clearly, this fight was bigger than Alina or me. It was about truth and the resilience of those who refused to be silenced by deceit. They had stripped me of nearly everything, but they made one critical mistake. They left me standing, wounded but not broken. And as the city lights glowed softly around me, I knew the next move belonged to me. The courtroom felt smaller than I'd expected, suffocating beneath fluorescent lights. The air buzzed softly with whispers, muted coughs, and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. Across the aisle, Alina sat poised, composed, flanked by Mark Elston, her guardian of deceit. Even now, as I watched her, she radiated perfect calm, betraying no sign of worry. But I knew better. Beneath her polished surface lay the quiet tremor of someone beginning to sense the ground beneath them shifting. Danielle took the seat beside me, her voice low and reassuring. "Ready?" I nodded, my breathing steady. "Let's finish this." Alina had opened confidently, her lawyer painting a vivid image of my supposed criminality, carefully crafted lies that echoed through the chamber like haunting refrains. But Danielle waited patiently, her expression unshaken. When it was finally our turn, she rose gracefully, holding the tiny thumb drive we had painstakingly prepared. "Your Honor, if I may," Danielle began, her voice clear and firm, "we have compelling digital evidence proving these accusations against Mr. Moore are not just false, but intentionally fabricated." The judge nodded, attentive yet skeptical. "Proceed." Danielle activated the screen behind her, displaying emails and financial documents meticulously reconstructed by our forensic team. These documents were allegedly sent by Mr. Moore, implicating him in fraudulent transactions. However, she paused deliberately, our expert analysis shows they were digitally manipulated. She highlighted timestamps, metadata, and digital fingerprints, each detail a precise stroke in our carefully painted picture of deception. The courtroom fell silent, absorbing the reality of our evidence. My gaze drifted momentarily to Alina. For the first time, her eyes flickered, unease cracking her carefully guarded facade. "And furthermore," Danielle continued, unrelenting, "we traced these manipulations directly back to the offices of Elston and Dorrance. Mr. Mark Elston himself authorized these alterations." Murmurs erupted around us. Elston visibly stiffened, glancing uneasily toward Alina. She refused to meet his gaze, eyes fixed rigidly ahead, betrayal coloring the edges of her careful composure. Then Danielle delivered the blow we'd reserved for this precise moment. She clicked open a single message, clearly time-stamped, sent from Alina's private account to Elston. If Julian signs by the 15th, everything transfers clean. He'll never see it coming. The silence deepened, dense and heavy. Alina's hands clenched subtly, knuckles whitening. The judge leaned forward, voice stern. "Counsel, can you explain this?" Elston cleared his throat nervously, attempting to object, but the damage was clear. Danielle continued methodically, each new piece of evidence further stripping away the carefully constructed illusion Alina and Elston had created. After a tense hour of testimony and relentless evidence, court adjourned briefly. Outside the chamber, Alina approached me, cornering me discreetly, her eyes blazing beneath a veneer of forced civility. "Julian, you're making a terrible mistake," she hissed, voice edged with panic. "You have no idea how far I'm willing to go." I met her gaze steadily, feeling nothing but cold resolve. "You're done, Alina. You built your lies on the assumption I was weak. But you were wrong." Her face twisted slightly, bitterness marring her elegant features. "Weakness? Your weakness was your arrogance, believing no one could ever deceive Julian Moore." I smiled thinly, unfazed by her attempted provocation. "My mistake was trusting you blindly. But your mistake was worse. You underestimated how far I'd go to protect my integrity." Before she could reply, Danielle gently pulled me aside, guiding me back toward the courtroom. "Don't let her bait you. She's desperate now." The final verdict came swiftly. The judge dismissed Alina's claims outright, citing clear evidence of conspiracy, manipulation, and fraud. The relief that washed over me was immense, yet tempered by lingering bitterness. Victory tasted less sweet than I'd imagined, tainted by betrayal's aftertaste. As the courtroom emptied, Danielle placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You won, Julian. You got your life back." I glanced across the room where Alina stood isolated. Elston, nowhere to be seen, the power she'd wielded so confidently now shattered into silence. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of pity, but it vanished quickly, replaced by a firm, uncompromising resolve. I would never allow myself or others to become victims again. That evening, as I sat alone in my office, the soft hum of city life below, I reflected deeply on the trial's aftermath. Headlines reversed overnight, now bearing Alina's name scandal, fraud, manipulation. Public opinion swung sharply back, apologetic investors attempting cautious returns. But my path was no longer tied solely to wealth or reputation. It now extended toward something greater, something I'd discovered amid the chaos. Purpose. Emma appeared at my office door, a cautious smile on her face. "Julian, there are people here to see you." In the lobby stood a small group men, faces marked by quiet resilience and cautious hope, each carrying a story similar to mine. They'd read about the trial, recognized their own suffering mirrored in my experience. One of them stepped forward tentatively. "We thought we were alone," he said quietly, "until we heard about you." His words struck deeply. In that instant, the isolation I'd carried for weeks dissolved into understanding. I had inadvertently become a beacon for those silently enduring financial and emotional exploitation within marriages. Danielle joined me, sensing the weight of the moment. "Julian, maybe it's time we turn your story into something powerful, something bigger than just a courtroom victory." I nodded slowly, realization dawning clearly. "You're right. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about giving a voice to everyone who's ever been manipulated, betrayed, or silenced." As night settled over the city, my office transformed into a gathering space. Stories were shared, painful, honest, liberating. I realized my battle with Alina had prepared me, not just to fight back personally, but to lead, to support, to protect others who suffered quietly in the shadows. I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I would leave behind the world of corporate finance and build something more meaningful, a foundation dedicated to protecting and empowering victims of financial abuse. I'd use my voice, my resources, and my experience to ensure others never suffered as I had. As the night wore on, the sense of camaraderie and purpose filled me completely. I caught Danielle's eye across the room. She smiled gently, knowingly. Perhaps she'd sensed all along that this was never just a case, it was a calling. The storm Alina brought into my life had nearly destroyed me, but from that wreckage emerged clarity. The pieces I'd lost had been replaced with strength, purpose, and something deeply meaningful: community. That night, alone once more in my apartment, I quietly opened a journal, pen in hand, ready to write the first lines of my new chapter. They flowed naturally, without hesitation. Never again will I mistake trust for blindness, or silence for weakness. My scars will not define me. They will guide me. I closed the journal, feeling the profound weight of renewal. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I knew exactly where it led. In the months that followed my courtroom victory, I quietly exited the world I'd built: my firm, my office, the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan. The media frenzy eventually faded into silence, replaced by whispers of redemption and resilience. But I'd moved beyond caring about headlines and public perceptions. Now I cared deeply about something far more profound: the countless others still trapped in silence, betrayed by trust, victimized by manipulation. On a cool autumn afternoon, I closed the heavy glass doors of my office for the last time. Emma stood by the entrance, eyes brimming gently with tears she tried to hide. She stepped forward and hugged me warmly. "You'll be missed here, Julian," she said softly. "Not nearly as much as I'll miss you," I replied, meaning every word. "Thank you for believing in me." Stepping onto the busy sidewalk, I breathed deeply. The city felt different now, no longer suffocating, but full of possibilities. My next chapter would not be written here, however. It required quiet contemplation, solitude, and a complete break from the past. So I traveled north, leaving behind Manhattan's noise for a small cabin nestled among dense woods overlooking a tranquil lake in upstate New York. Here, time slowed. Each morning brought gentle sunlight filtering through the mist. Each evening offered quiet contemplation beneath endless stars. It was in that humble solitude I began building the foundation of what would become the Aegis Fund, a resource dedicated to providing legal, financial, and emotional support for individuals suffering from financial manipulation and emotional betrayal within relationships. Danielle, steadfast and determined, became my strongest ally, connecting us with brilliant lawyers, advocates, and counselors ready to join our cause. The first calls we received were tentative, filled with cautious hope. Gradually, they became steadier, stronger voices previously unheard finding confidence in their shared stories. Each conversation reaffirmed my decision, transforming personal pain into collective strength. One evening, Danielle visited the cabin, bringing documents outlining the legal structure of our growing foundation. Over dinner, she paused, studying me carefully. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "Alina probably thought she destroyed you. She never imagined she'd be the catalyst for something so meaningful." I smiled slightly, the sting of betrayal now softened by purpose. Maybe that's the true meaning of resilience, not merely surviving betrayal, but turning it into something powerful enough to help others. Danielle nodded, eyes gentle but serious. "You've done that, Julian. You've turned wounds into wisdom." Weeks later, I found myself speaking at a small community hall, my first public appearance since the trial. The room was quiet, filled with men and women who'd silently suffered the same indignities I once endured. I took a deep breath, then began speaking openly, honestly, no longer as a victim, but as someone who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. "Manipulation thrives in silence," I told them clearly. "But once we speak, it loses its power. We reclaim our lives the moment we refuse to hide our scars." The audience listened intensely, nodding softly, eyes glistening with recognition. When the talk concluded, a line of people quietly formed. One by one, they shook my hand, hugged me, thanked me. An elderly man approached last, eyes clouded with quiet suffering. "I've stayed silent for decades, thinking no one would ever listen," he said softly, gripping my hand firmly. "Tonight you gave me courage. Thank you, Julian." Tears threatened, but I held them at bay, gripping his hand back. "Your voice matters. It always has." As months passed, the Aegis Fund grew stronger, broader in reach. We partnered with influential platforms, advocacy groups, and support networks. We became a sanctuary, a source of strength for people once afraid to speak. Yet, amid all this activity, I often found peace in solitary moments, by the lake reflecting quietly, pen and notebook always at hand. One evening, as twilight painted the lake in hues of lavender and gold, I opened a blank page and began writing. Life has shown me clearly trust is precious, powerful, and painfully fragile. We must guard it carefully, offer it cautiously, yet never fear giving it completely to those who truly earn it. I paused, listening to the distant call of birds, the gentle lap of water at the shore. Memories drifted slowly, the harsh betrayal, the courtroom tension, Alina's confident smile shattering into defeat. But now, those memories held no bitterness, only gratitude for lessons learned and strength gained. I continued writing steadily, each sentence clearer, stronger, resonating deeply. Our scars remind us of battles endured. They prove we survived, but they also demand something more, that we grow wiser, stronger, and kinder. In the end, betrayal doesn't define who we are. Our response to it does. I closed the journal softly as evening fully embraced the cabin. A gentle knock broke my solitude. Danielle stood at the doorway, smiling warmly. "We've just confirmed funding from 2 major donors," she said, stepping closer. "The Aegis Fund is officially unstoppable." I rose, smiling back, deeply satisfied. This was never just about my story. It's about all of ours. She nodded, stepping beside me at the window, gazing out over the lake. "Have you finally found peace here, Julian?" I considered the question thoughtfully. I found something even better: purpose. In that peaceful cabin, far from Wall Street's ruthless chaos, I understood profoundly that my journey wasn't one of revenge, but rebirth. From betrayal had emerged resilience, from deception, clarity, and from isolation, a vibrant, supportive community. Months later, during another packed conference hall, I stood confidently before a new audience, speaking openly. My voice carried strength and conviction, unwavering. I once believed betrayal would define me, break me, diminish me, but I was wrong. The worst moments of our lives often contain hidden strength, waiting for us to claim it. You don't rebuild from betrayal, you build something entirely new, something powerful and enduring. My words echoed clearly, strongly, resonating with everyone present. As applause erupted warmly, genuine and heartfelt, I knew beyond doubt I'd finally completed my journey. Later that night, back at the cabin, beneath a sky sprinkled thick with stars, I felt true clarity. The past no longer haunted me. Instead, it guided me, giving meaning to every step I now took. Inside, near the fireplace, I placed a single photo on the mantel, an image of the lake at dawn, serene, hopeful, full of possibilities. Beside it, my journal lay open, revealing one final line I had written boldly. "We are not defined by those who hurt us, but by what we choose to become afterward." And as I stood quietly in that gentle, perfect silence, I knew with absolute certainty I had chosen wisely.